It's when you have an allowed function like an auto forward, it's almost like the helper tool of the AI tool that would be able to do that. It doesn't seem like it would be useful because it's an allowed function.
Correct.
That it wouldn't trigger necessarily. Is there anything within Microsoft that could be turned on? Like, is there?
Well, and that's just only one avenue of attack. Because keep in mind, with the whole rise in malware hitting iOS devices, I can just put a malware on someone's iPad and never touch the account and never touch any of Microsoft's security, never touch anything. That all comes down to you have an uncontrolled endpoint, and I've tapped into that. Because then I don't even have to auto forward. I can just sit there on that uncontrolled endpoint and send myself emails directly from the iPad of copies of whatever I want. Same thing is true of a home PC. And so as everyone works from home, the number of uncontrolled devices raises. We've even had calls where people are going home with a laptop, but they realize I'm stuck at home for 8 weeks. Well, I've got a computer at home with dual monitors. I'm just going to use that instead of my work laptop because I've got my multi-factor, so I can just authorize myself and play with email and Office and OneDrive, and that's most of what I need to do for the first half of the day. And so we're seeing more and more people doing that as well because they want to use their nice big monitors, not the small work laptop, because we're not talking about a week out of work. We're now talking about 2 months out of work, 3 months at home. And so we're seeing that rise as well. And so when you look at that, that's a whole new avenue of attack.
So just so I make sure I understand. So what you're saying is that someone on their iPad wants to get access to email, so they download the 365 client to that. And the example you just gave was an authorized access, but I'm imagining that could just be done with unauthorized access as well. I mean, unless
absolutely. If people do not have the correct configuration for Microsoft multi-factor as well as conditional access. And that statement is true regardless of if Okta and Duo and all that stuff is used. Doesn't matter. You still need to have the appropriate configuration in Microsoft with the conditional access. Otherwise, just by getting the password, you can take devices like an iPad, like a Droid tablet, and actually circumvent underneath of the authentication and have a fully functioning active sync style device. You actually have to do some hardening of the configuration. And that's true whether, if you have RSA, Okta, Duo, doesn't matter. There's still a Microsoft side hardening that has to be done to prevent people from basically dropping back to basic authentication and bypassing all of that style of access. And I'd say every time we assess it, that's easily in the 80+% of people do not have that hardened. Because the assumption is we bought Okta, it should handle it. We bought Duo, it should handle it.
Yeah, that's always the assumption.
And it's not. And the other assumption there is that we have Okta or Duo, so therefore we don't need Azure AD Premium 1, or we don't need Enterprise Mobility Suite E3. That's also incorrect. You do need one of those to properly do the conditional access to protect yourself from that. When we're talking about ACH wire transfer fraud, multi-factor as well as conditional access is the number one item to defeat that. The number two item to defeat that is going to be cloud app security, because that starts to help defend against all of those uncontrolled endpoints that I was just complaining about. So not only would it help in terms of people at home and traveling around, but then it would help against those uncontrolled endpoints. But then the third thing to really worry about there is every time we get a call saying, here's this ACH wire transfer fraud, how did they hack us? I would say well over half the time, it's not actually that person. It's whoever they're dealing with that has been hacked. So the whole thing that makes ACH and wire transfer fraud work is to be a very good parasite and never notify the host that you're there. So typically the person who has been subverted is not the one who is losing the money.